When we talk about the 21st century in the Indo-Pacific, the conversation usually defaults to a single overwhelming assumption. We are living in a G2 world, a future dictated entirely by either an inevitable clash or an uncomfortable partnership between Washington and Beijing. For the nations actually living in this region, that binary framework is a trap. It suggests that survival means picking a side, orbiting one superpower and hoping for the best. But leaning entirely on the United States comes with its own anxieties. Diplomatic shifts during recent administrations have forced Asian leaders to question the long-term reliability of American strategic promises. On the other side, leaning toward Beijing means dealing with a rapidly expanding military footprint. And more importantly, it means navigating a neighbor willing to use its massive economic weight to punish political disagreements. The traditional superpower binary is breaking down as a stable way to govern the region. If neither extreme offers security, the rest of Asia has to look for a third option to secure their borders. The solution you hear most often from Western analysts is economic decoupling. The idea is that these nations should sever ties with Beijing and align fully with Washington. But the data shows why that is a fantasy. Look at this chart comparing annual trade volumes with China. Japan does roughly $300 billion a year. For the ASEAN countries, that number crosses the $1 trillion mark. You cannot simply sever a $1 trillion artery. At the same time, relying heavily on a single trading partner for your economic survival creates weaponized interdependence. A large chunk of that volume is critical leverage, leaving these nations vulnerable to sudden export bans or tariffs if tensions rise. Yet, while their economies are tethered to China, their defense relies on the other side of the ocean. Maintaining true maritime and border security across the Indo-Pacific still heavily requires an active United States military presence. They cannot afford to cut off Beijing, and they cannot afford to abandon the American security umbrella. Instead of choosing, they have to systematically de-risk their reliance on both at the same time. This double bind is driving a distinct strategy, one built by major Asian nations expanding cooperation directly among themselves. It is called the G-2 approach. While managing Chinese power in the Indo-Pacific is a reality that must be addressed, this strategy avoids the escalatory nature of a formal anti-China coalition. Similarly, these countries view a sustained U.S. presence as essential for stability, making these internal partnerships a way to keep Washington incentivized and engaged. This creates a bloc of middle powers capable of operating with their own strategic horizons. By strengthening ties with each other, they cultivate a layer of maneuverability. It is a highly pragmatic move. This network gives them a form of strategic autonomy, proving that regional power doesn't only cascade down from the two giants at the top. If we temporarily ignore the United States and China on the map, we see the massive capabilities of the remaining players. Japan and South Korea act as heavy industrial engines, providing advanced manufacturing, infrastructure finance, and semiconductor production to the bloc. Down south, Australia and New Zealand function as resource sentinels. They supply the indispensable critical minerals, agricultural technology, and maritime security that keep those northern factories running. Then you have the anchors, India and Indonesia. Both bring a fierce tradition of non-alignment, along with massive, growing domestic markets that can absorb regional exports without relying on Western consumers. Geographically, these two nations also sit astride the physical confluence of the Indian and Pacific Oceans, controlling the critical shipping choke points that the entire system relies on. By integrating these specific economic, technological, and geographic capabilities, these middle powers dilute the leverage that any single superpower holds over them. Together, this group accounts for a massive share of global manufacturing, innovation, shipping, and trade. As a cohesive unit, their collective weight is beginning to rival the traditional superpowers. But a decentralized network like this is only as strong as its anchor. If the G-2 strategy is going to survive real geopolitical pressure, India has to act as a true center of gravity. Handshakes and diplomatic summits are a good start, but they simply aren't enough. India has to execute economic reforms and modernize its own defense industrial base to carry its weight in the web. The future of the region may depend less on the direct competition between Washington and Beijing, and more on how effectively this new network of middle powers manages to navigate the space between them. If they succeed, the Indo-Pacific will be defined by its own internal resilience, rather than the goals of outside powers.